Welcome in, everyone. It's a fine Wednesday. It's actually pretty warm. It's 60 degrees here in Denver. And I think we're actually expecting some rain and snow tomorrow, which will be interesting. But yeah, overall, very pleasant day. So today we're going to be talking about the new commander deck that I've kind of brewed up. And I saw this card in the pre-release and thought it was interesting. And then I saw what happened on game nights, and really wanted to take a look at this deck. So let's be honest, if you're watching this video, you've probably already seen it. But if you haven't, go check out game nights number 67. And there is a link of the Voja deck that this is kind of based on, but this is my take on it. There are significant changes from what was done from Aaron's deck. So I do want to make that clear. This is not a carbon copy, but it is based on what was shown on game nights. But I made some substantial changes, my own kind of flavor on it, which I think kind of does things a little bit better, but also it's a little safer, I'll say. So if you enjoy this content, be sure to give it a like on YouTube, put a comment down on anything that you would have done differently, or think there are cards that you think that would be better in this brew that I haven't thought of. So let's go ahead and get started. So Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. Anyone that is familiar with Ravnica probably has seen Voja before. Tolsmir has been a friend of Voja. They've been linked together for decades at this point. So Voja has returned. You can even see Tolsmir in the background. But Voja is finally its own card. So for 2 and Naya, which is red, green, and white, it's a legendary creature, Wolf. That's a 5/5. It has Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 3. Whenever Voja, Jaws of the Conclave, attacks, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, and then draw a card for each wolf you control. So we have attack triggers, and we want a wide board space in order to kind of build everything up. And we care about elves and wolves. For Aaron, it does seem that he kind of went with this, but he added a lot of changelings. There are actually quite a few changelings in here. And so he went with I'm going to make sure that every trigger of my commander attacking triggers the maximum number of times. Because the nice thing about changelings is that they are every creature type. So Voja would get both the elf trigger and the wolf trigger for each changeling that is on the battlefield. And that is very good. Like, it's really nice. Like, I play tested it and it does work out very well. The problem is that a lot of changelings kind of just go onto the battlefield and then they don't really do anything else. So I do have a few changelings in here, like Realm Walker and Bloodline Predator and Mirror Entity, but I didn't go really hard onto the changeling because I kind of felt like there was a little bit more that we could do to kind of like make this a little bit more robust. It's clear that Voja is not going to be the target of single target removal. Obviously, like Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile, which are the most efficient removal spells, they are going to cost 4. So at that point, you're looking. It's more efficient to do a board wipe than it is to single targetly remove Voja. So, like that is really nice. And so I also made sure that most of our instances are to protect the board state rather than any sort of like combat tricks or anything like that. So what did we do here? And what were the this deck is very creature heavy. We have 35 creatures plus our commander, so we're at 36. More than a third of our deck is dedicated to creatures, which makes sense because we get benefits from having a lot of creatures. So, Anara Wolvid Familiar is a legendary wolf beast. It's a 4/4. As long as it's your turn, commanders you control have indestructible. Like, this was just an easy pick. Curves out nicely with the commander. So turn 4, you drop this. Turn 5, you drop your Voja. Or turn 5, you drop Voja. Turn 6, you drop Anara. Suddenly you can swing with a 5/5 and not be worried about it dying. And it's a wolf, so you get to draw additional cards when it's out. Arwen, Weaver of Hope. I've been trying to stay away from Lord of the Rings, but something like this is very difficult to ignore. She's a 2/1 elf noble for 3 mana. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it, equal to Arwen, Weaver of Hope's toughness. So she synergizes very well with Voja. She comes out onto the battlefield at any point in time, really, honestly. And then Voja attacks. She gets +1/+1 counters. Suddenly she's a 4/3, 5/4 easily. And so suddenly all of your creatures are coming in with +4/+4 counters, or 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Like, that's insane. So yeah. And one thing I really like about this deck is that while Voja is very difficult to get rid of, like, so a lot of your opponents are going to be trying to get rid of your board state and just put their single target removal on here. It doesn't matter because everything's going to get pumped up. It's not just Voja. And as you can kind of see, this deck is like more or less mono green with red and white splashed in for flavor. So, Bloodline Predator, it is a changeling. This may be one that I might cut. I kept it in just because it does other things. But when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type whenever another creature of the chosen type, namely either elves or wolves, depending on your hand, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodline Predator. So it just grows itself a little bit, bigger, so that Voja is not the only problem that your opponents have to deal with. Bloom Tender is clearly a must. When you're running multiple colors. So, and it's an elf. Cemetery Prowler is a 3/4 with Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card type they share with cards exiled with Cemetery Prowler. So ideally, what you would do... Hey, Greggy, how you doing, sir? Welcome on in. So Cemetery Prowler ideally comes in. Your opponent has I'm doing just fine. Happy Wednesday to you. Cemetery Prowler comes in. You exile a creature that an opponent has in a graveyard. All of a sudden, now all creatures that you have come into play, costs 1 less to cast. So it's a really just good card, and it's a wolf, so it just makes everything better overall. Elvish Mystic, it's just easy. Everything's mostly green, so just having a mana dork, that's a creature, it's fine. Evolution Sage, really, really nice in this. So it has a landfall trigger, so whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you proliferate. Well, Voja just gives everyone +1/+1 counters. And we have a few tokens in here, but it's not really going to be that much of that big of a deal. But really, it's just the +1/+1 counters that we're going to be dealing with, and just giving everyone additional +1/+1 counters is just going to be kind of absolutely crazy. Farhaven Elf, this is mostly here for the mana fixing. We are technically in 3 colors, and one thing that I've noticed in the playtesting is that it's really difficult to get. We're so heavily invested in the green, and we really need to have as much green as possible. But we also need some white and a little bit of red. And so stuff like Farhaven Elf and Primeval Herald come in and help with that mana fixing. So they can go find a basic. We don't have that many basics in here, but we do have enough just to make sure that we do get that mana fixing in here. Ferocious Pup, it's a great card. It's a 0/1, comes in to play. You create a 2/2 wolf. So perfect for Voja. Findhorn Elves, just like Elvish Mystic. I'm kind of torn on how many of these mana dorks that we need, and honestly, we'll talk about what's on the considering. I might cut one of these in order to put something that additionally does more mana fixing in order to kind of help with this deck, and we'll talk about that later. Galligators, great card, love to see it. Whenever another creature in its battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You put a +1/+1 counter on Galligators. Great. Something great for already that synergizes with Voja. You create a tapped treasure token, something that helps with mana fixing, or you gain 2 life. Hallow Henge Overlord. So 4/4 with flash at the beginning of your upkeep. The flash is really that just sells this card. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's a 4/4 with flash for 6 mana at the beginning of your upkeep. For each creature you control that's a wolf or werewolf, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Let's just say that you have 3 wolves out. Now, granted, holding up 6 mana, not the easiest thing to do. But if you have this card and, you're also just kind of holding up a Flawless Maneuver, Boros Charm, Heroic Intervention, you just have something to make sure that your board state stays alive, and then no one does anything. And you flash in Hallow Henge Overlord, and all of a sudden, you untap and just create 3 2/2s. Like, out of nowhere. That's absolutely insane. So, this is definitely a win con right here. There's no denying. Like, this is a huge bomb that you just drop. And everyone, just loses all hope once this card comes down. Incubation Druid. This is a really cool card. I didn't know about this before. It's an elf. 0/2 elf for 2 mana. Add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has +1/+1 counter on it, which is very easy to do, add 3 mana of that type instead. Blood. How you doing? Welcome on in. You're a returning player to In Real Life MTG. Welcome. I am. You want to know what some OP commander decks? Well, I am debuting something that I think is going to be quite OP. I came back last January, so I've been back for over a year now. I played for several years between Exodus and the first Ravnica set, and been playing both Arena and Commander in real life, and been having a great time. So if please feel free to ask any questions. This is Voja, Jaws of the Conclave, which is a brand new commander. Came out in the Murders of Karlov Manor set. So Incubation Druid, easily to get a +1/+1 counter on it, and then all of a sudden you have 3 mana. You can tap it for 3 mana. The Adapt 3 is never going to come up, honestly. The only thing that is kind of troublesome with the Incubation Druid is that you don't really need more than 1 or 2 of any different color besides green, but you need to have at least 1. So that's the one downfall about Incubation Druid. Kadama of the West Tree, 3/3 Reach Spirit. This is another thing that I wanted to do for mana fixing. Also kind of helps thin out the deck for basics. So modified creatures you control have trample. And whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, each search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. So essentially what this does is it gives every creature trample, just innately. Like this is basically, it's not Fires of Yamamaya, but like, yeah, just like giving everything trample is just kind of ridiculous. Like, because anything that's modified is anything that has a +1/+1 counter on it. So, and everything is going to have a +1/+1 counter on it as soon as your commander attacks. So it's just, it's too good to pass up. Like, besides the fact that it's not an elf or a wolf, like this card is just insane. Llanowar Elf, again, I might just cut one of these mana dorks. We'll see. Masked Vandal, 1/3 Changeling. So this is something that will show up as both an elf and a wolf, which helps trigger the commander. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, exile a targeted artifact or enchantment. Really, this is just one of those, like, it's a shapeshifter that like does other things, and that's why it's staying in the deck. Like the other shapeshifters where they're just like, I'm a shapeshifter and I get to do double triggers on your commander, but I don't do anything else. It's like I just needed more for the shapeshifters. Master of the Wild Hunt. When it enters the battlefield, I'm sorry. Master of the Wild Hunt, at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 2/2 wolf creature token. Pretty much that's the only reason why it's here. You can tap it and then tap an all untapped wolf creatures you control. Each wolf tapped this way deals damage to its power to target creature. That creature then deals damage equal to its power divided as its controller chooses among any number of those wolves. And so essentially what you can do with this is, like, say there's something that's troublesome and you attack, you want to get rid of it. The defending player is not blocking, obvious reasons, like that angel that, prevents all combat prevents damage to the player as long as it's out, and it's refusing to block with it, and you can't find any of your Path to Exile, Swords of Plowshares, what have you. You use this, you attack with your wolves first off, just to get the combat out of the way. Then you tap this, and then tap any wolves that you've created, and then you can get rid of very targeted items. It's really nice. Mirror Entity, you can bump up the base power, so like all your 1/1 or 0/2 elves or stuff like that can be bumped up. I don't know. I might just get rid of it because wolves are already 2/2s. So like, I'm a little on the fence on this one. We'll say. Paxong Pup, awesome card that you can drop at the beginning. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control another wolf or werewolf, put a +1/+1 counter on Paxong Pup. When it dies, you gain life equal to its power. Just fantastic card. Pollen Bright Druid. When it enters the battlefield, choose one, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So just Incubation Druid, something like that. Or you can proliferate and just give everyone an additional +1/+1 counter. Really nice if, say, your Voja has entered the command zone for whatever reason. Priest of Titania, add 1 green mana for in the mana pool for each elf you on the battlefield. This is not just your elves, it's every elf. Just want to make sure we're aware about that. Primal Adversary. It's a 4/3 with trample. When it enters the battlefield, it may pay 2 any number of times. Put that many +1/+1 counters on Primal Adversary, then up to that many target lands you control become 3/3 wolf creatures with haste that are still lands. Good. One thing to note is that they don't untap when they become wolves, but they are still wolf creatures for the remainder of the game. So Voja will see these wolves throughout the rest of the game until they're destroyed in some manner. Primeval Herald. This is basically Farhaven Elf, but you can attack with it and get another basic land, which is why it's in here. Realm Walker allows you to look at the top card and play that card. So it's essentially just like an additional card in your hand that's not technically in your hand. Just really nice. Rex Sage, destroy target artifact or enchantment when it ETBs. Roaming Throne. I'm on the fence of it just because it's so, like, the Roaming Throne is just so freaking expensive, and it's one of those things that, it could be in any sort of tribal deck, but it's hard because Voja has 2, even though it's a single trigger, it's 2 triggers in one. And putting X times 2 counters on every creature's, like, or like, it's not unfeasible to see like 3 or 4 elves on play when you're attacking with Voja. So like putting 8 +1/+1 counters on everything, and then everyone has trample with 8 +1/+1 counters on it is not inconceivable. And then also drawing a bunch of cards twice is also not inconceivable with Roaming Throne. It's kind of insane. Shalai and Halar. This, and there's another card in here. These are the backups for when someone stalls out because they have a bunch of fogs or something else. So it's a 1 and an Aya for a 3/3 with Flying Vigilance. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put onto a creature you control, Shalai and Halar deal that much damage to target opponent. So someone starts, has that recursive fog that will never go away. You drop Shalai and Halar, or all will be 1. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter if they have fogs. Yeah, something that I think Aaron's deck lacked was a alternate win con. Silver Fur Partisan, because I've definitely been in a lot of spots where I have a commanding board presence. I should be at the point of winning, and someone has a fog and they stall out and they continue to stall out, and there's like not a whole lot I can do. And I have to kind of just wait for them to either trip up or run out of resources. And which, like, by that time, you're probably decking yourself with Voja. So, something like this is really handy. Silver for partisan. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 wolf and put it onto the battlefield. This is more of just a don't touch my stuff kind of card, not a I'm not going to put target my stuff with instants or sorceries to generate wolves. This is more of a don't touch my stuff kind of card. Tolsimir, friend to wolves. When ETBs, create a 3/3 green-white wolf creature named Voja, friend to elves. And then whenever a wolf enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. And that creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, which is really nice. Midnight's Tolsimir, Midnight's Light. It's a 3/2 with a lifelink. When it ETBs, create Voja, Fenstalker, a legendary 5/5 green-white wolf creature token with trample. Whenever a wolf you control attacks, if Tolsimir attack this turn, target creature an opponent controls blocks that wolf that wolf this combat if able. So just really nice, like, recurring fight spells. We have a wolf deck. We got to have a Tovolar. So Tovolar, Dire Overlord. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control 3 or more wolves or werewolves, it becomes night. Then transform any number of human werewolves you control, and it has daybound. So it's a 3/3. So unfortunately, we do have to now worry about the day-night cycle. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. And then you can pay X and Gruel. Target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X +0 and trample until end of turn, and it's nightbound. So obviously, like, Tovolar is a very popular commander, but he is also just useful in general. You drop him, and then you can draw like a bunch of cards with your wolves. Voja comes in also, like, drawing cards. It's just too good to pass up. Passing up on Tovolar. Wolf Skull Shaman. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top card of your library. If it shares a creature type with Wolf Skull Shaman, you may reveal it. If you do, put a 2/2 wolf creature token into play. So you reveal an elf, which a lot of these cards are elves. You can reveal it and create a wolf. It's perfect. It's so good. Wood Elves and ATBs who search for a forest card. This is non-basic, so you can search for a Jetmir's Garden. It's very nice. Then put it in the battlefield and shuffle. And then Ren's Run Packmaster. So 5/5, you champion an elf, which means that you exile an elf. And then you return it back onto the battlefield when this creature leaves the battlefield. So if you have something that has an ETB trigger, such as let's say Rexage or Primeval Herald or Farhaven Elf or Wood Elves, it's really nice. You don't care if it dies, and it being a 5/5, it's kind of a big deal. 2 and a green, put a 2/2 wolf creature token into the battlefield, which we have a lot of mana batteries here to go ahead and pay that. And then wolves you control have Death Touch, because why not? Why the hell not? So moving on to sorceries. We have one board wipe. Because I don't think that we don't really want to be putting a whole lot of efforts onto board wipes. We want to protect our creatures. And I landed on Blasphemous Act. The reason being is that if there is a reason that we need to cast a Blasphemous Act, such as someone is going crazy with a bunch of tokens and there's no way that we can block 100 or 200 tokens or what have you, we definitely wanted to have like some access to a board wipe at some point. But the bigger thing is that we wanted a board wipe that our creatures could actually survive. And while Blasphemous Act 13 damage is a lot, we can definitely our creatures can survive that. It's not very difficult. We do have one Cultivate in here. Mostly it's just because we had to have some mana fixing in here. I mean, primarily we are doing all the elves and stuff like that, but I figured that we would just have one sorcery speed spell. I might switch this out with like a Farseek. Or because we don't have that many. We do not have that many basics, so I don't want to do. What's that? There's one card that allows you to search for them X number of basics based on the the highest power of creatures that you control. But like, we only have, I want to say like 10 basics in the entire deck. So that like that's not really the point. The point is to like just mana fix so that we have like the 1 red, the 2 white available so that we can the deck hums. Otherwise this is literally just like an almost mono green deck. Overwhelming Stampede until end of turn. Creatures you control get trample plus X, where X is the greatest. So you just double the greatest power of creature you control and everything else, and everything is trample, and you basically win. It's a win con. And Shamanic Revelation. I don't know. Playing this deck, if Voja sticks for 1 turn and then attacks, like you never have to worry about cards. But the ferociousness is nice. So it's sticking for right now. So ferociousness is you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. It's pretty much going to be everything. If it's just one of those things where it's just like, I don't know. We don't really need that much additional card draw, but because like Voja just does so much work. But if you're being targeted and singled out, and Voja just can't stick on the board for an entire turn cycle and you can't attack, it can become a problem. As far as instances, we have the standard Naya instance. So we have Beast Within, Boros Charm for the Indestructible, Clever Concealment for the Phase Out, Flawless Immover for the Indestructible, Generous Gift, Heroic Intervention for the Indestructible and Hexproof, Path to Exile. Predator's Howl is quite nice. You create a 2/2 wolf creature token, or you can play with the Morbid. So if a creature died this turn, you create 3 2/2 wolves. So, okay, sure. I'll take 3 2/2s for 4 mana at instant speed. Absolutely. Sword Plowshares, and then Take the Bait, which is how Aaron won the game, which is it's a really funny card. So cast this only during an opponent's turn and only during combat. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control this turn. Untap all attacking creatures and goad them. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So basically, it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, yeah, like, so you attack me with everything and you try to kill me because everyone's ganged up on me. Whatever, right? You cast Take the Bait, and then you prevent all combat damage that occurs. They all untap. They're goaded, so they all have to attack again, and now they attack their opponents. It's such a hilarious, like it had to go stay in. So, in terms of artifacts, we have Arcane Signet, obviously, Soul Ring, obviously, Lightning Greaves. We went with this. We might do. We might do Swiftfoot Boots instead. We're not targeting anything, so I don't like. It's not really that big of an issue, but so right now it's Lightning Greaves. Maskwood Nexus. Creatures you control are every creature type. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards that you own that are not on the battlefield. And then pay 3, tap, create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. So basically, this just turns everything into a wolf and an elf, which is just silly. Like I don't know why this card exists, but it does, and it had to be in here. And this was also the reason why I removed a bunch of changelings, is because this one card just kind of fixes the changeling. You know, not a changeling. Well, now everything is a changeling. So, board. Sword of Body and Mind. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection of green and blue. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a 2/2 green wolf and creature token, and that player mills 10 cards. What are you doing? Yeah. Obviously, we're doing it for the wolf token. Like, grant, there is Beast Within. There's not a whole lot of like green removal that I'm terribly afraid of. The Mills 10 is just kind of like icing on the cake. It really isn't like anything that it's literally just like, hey, like how can we make more wolves? Well, we get Sword of Body and Mind. And then there's the Great Henge. Great Henge is just way too good, and it's way too easy to cast. Voja, I believe it's 5. Yeah, it's a 5/5. So like even base Voja like turns this into a 4-mana artifact. And yeah, just when we're already at basically a mono green deck, like adding 2 green mana is gonna be great. And then another non-token creature enters the battlefield you control. You get a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. So it's really is starting to feel like a Simic deck. We're not even in blue. So, and then all will be 1. So 5 mana, 3 and double red for an enchantment. Whenever you put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, all will be 1 deals that much damage to target opponent, creature an opponent controls, or planeswalker an opponent controls. So, do you swing with Voja? You have 3 to 4 elves out onto the battlefield. Not anything. That's not unreasonable, right? And you have, let's say you have 4 elves and 2 to 3 other wolves, right? You have 7 creatures out on the battlefield. So you are now putting 4 +1/+1 counters on 7 creatures. That's 28 damage that you pass around to problematic creatures, problematic planeswalkers, if there's any, or just right to the face. Why wasn't this ever included in Aaron's deck? I do not know. But All Will Be One is such an insane card with Voja. And then to just put icing on the cake, let's go to the Simic precon from Ixalan, Last Conference of Ixalan, Branching Evolution. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put onto it, twice that many are put onto it instead. So you have Branching Evolution, and you're putting 4 +1/+1 counters on 7 creatures. Now you're putting 8 +1/+1 counters on 7 creatures. That's 56 damage. That's lethal on a player from a 2-3 card combo. It's insane. Feed the Pack. Wonderful card. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, put X 2/2 wolf creature tokens onto play, where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. So let's say you just have a Farhaven elf, and it's just been sitting around. Ferocious Pup. Like, it's done its ETB trigger. It's done. Like, it's not doing anything. Any of the mana dorks where you're just like, well, you can make 1 green mana, but I kind of feel weird tapping this 10/10 for 1 green mana. You sacrifice it to feed the pack, and you create 10 2/2s that will all get +1/+1 counters. And honestly, like, you full send, you attack, and they're able to block or whatever, and you're like, oh no, like, I don't have any blockers, and then you sacrifice something to feed the pack, and then you have an army of 2/2s. So, Growing Rites of Itlamok. This is Guy's Cradle on an enchantment. So, ETBs, look at the top 4 cards. You may reveal a creature card among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform Growing Rites of Itlamok, and then it becomes Itlamok Cradle of the Sun, and it's Guy's Cradle. So you can tap it for green, or tap it for green for each creature you control. So very handy on a kind of wideboard state. Howling Moon, really good for Ferocious Pup and Packsunk Pup. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target wolf or werewolf gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So now you have a 2/3 or a 3/3. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So just another way to make wolves. Rhythm of the Wild. Just, you're in red and green. You basically need Rhythm of the Wild. It's just that easy. Creature spells you control cannot be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. So just remember that these are non-token creatures. But other than that, yeah, like, we have a lot of creatures here. We're not hard based on creating tokens. So Rhythm of the Wild is definitely an asset here. Takasia's Welcome. I put this in here. I might take it out. So whenever one or more creatures you can with mana value 3 or less, such as all of our wolf tokens that we'll be creating at all times, ETB under your control, draw a card. This triggers only once per turn. So Takasia's Welcome is one of those cards it kind of flies under the radar when you're obviously not just going hard on tokens. Like, if you're making just a bunch of elves or whatever, then yeah, it's one of those. It's just I think people underappreciate Takasia's Welcome. I really do. And it's one of those things where, like, if you're being like targeted, if it's a 3-on-1, Takazia's Welcome can definitely keep you in the game. So like you can bring out that 1/1 or bring out a wolf token or what have you, and you get that extra card draw, and that could be the difference between life and death. So it's just one of those things where it's like the value will fall off as soon as the commander comes out and like really starts that engine starts running. Then it's just like a supplemental motor. But man, like it can really save your ass when the time is right. So and then tribute to the World Tree. When a creature ETBs under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2+1/+1 counters on it. So you create a bunch of 2/2 wolves. They are now 4/4 wolves. It's really nice. And then War Leader's Call. I believe this was in Aaron's deck. Yeah. I don't know how relevant this is going to be. I'm not making a whole lot of tokens. Like it's basically Perforos on an enchantment. The +1/+1 is entirely meaningless in this deck. It really is just like it really is just like the 1 damage to each opponent. And it's just like, well, then why don't you just have Perforos? So, might think about it. There's other stuff in here that we can also just use rather than War Leader's Call. So, I don't know of anything that's just like, yeah, like really need that extra +1/+1. If it was like another like Rhythm of the Wild where it had like trample or haste, like this would definitely be like a must include. But right now, it's definitely on the list of like it might just be cut for something else. As far as lands go, I have 35 because our curve is relatively low. As you can see here, our 2 expensive cards are Blasphemous Act and the Great Henge, which obviously drop down in cost substantially very easily. So yeah, I'm good with sticking with 35, in which I might also fix. We have Brushland and Carplusen Forest. I might cut these. I don't know. So what we have is we have the Battlebond land. So beautiful promenade, spectator seating, and what? Why can't I think of the last Battlebond land? Clifftop Retreat. No. What is? It's green. Oh, Spire Garden. Yeah, Spire Garden. So these are the Battlebond lands. Pain lands are Brushland and Rockfell or Carplusen Forest. We have a Cabaret Courtyard for just the mana fixing, just in case. And then we have Canopy Vista, which I'm including both Canopy Vista and Cinderglade in here because they have the basic land types in here, so we can search for them. We just have the 2 ones that have forests in here. I don't know. We might just go and enter these into basics. Clifftop Retreat, because like really, if this was like a Farseek, that would make a little bit more sense to have these 2 in here. Clifftop Retreat, fine. I think we'll always have like a mountain or a plains in here. Command Tower, obviously. Fabled Passage, obviously. Forests, we have 6 forests, 3 mountains, and 3 plains. Jetmir's Garden, plus a jungle shrine for the triomes. Overgrown farmland, because I think slow lands are just almost as good as battle bonds. There's almost no point in never having anything else. And like, in terms of like, you're always going to have like 3 lands. Like, no one is going to keep a 2-land or 2-land hand, and one of them is a slow land, and the other one's also another tapped land. It's just kind of insane. Path of Ancestry, it's just one of the. Yeah, I mean, it comes into play tapped, but like being able to scry a little bit and always have the mana fixing is nice. One thing that I am a little wary about, and I might think about putting, is Mine or Thought Vessel. We certainly do not need the colorless mana, but only having a Reliquary Tower, like, you can draw a lot of cards with Voja, and when you're humming, you're gonna be dumping a lot of cards into your graveyard, and there's no recursion in here. So right now, Reliquary Tower is the only thing that takes away your maximum hand size. We'll see how it goes. We'll play test this. We might revisit. Rockfell Vale, 2 or more lands. Same with Overgrown Forest, so it's just a slow land. Root Bound Crag. You're always gonna have a forest. It's not an issue. Sacred Foundry. I did pick up several of these shock lands from the Ravnica set. So we're putting both Temple Garden and Sacred Foundry in here, and Stomping Ground. Same with Sun Petal Grove. We're always going to have a forest. This is not an issue. And then just for kicks, I put in Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, because, again, this is basically a mono green deck with a splash of red and white. So that's the lands. I think it works very well. And here are the changes that we made, plus like other creatures that we were considering. So Avian Changeling, it was a changeling, but it had flying. Okay, like, it's cool. I definitely see the potential of it. Problem is, it's a 3-mana 2/2 with fly. It's a 2/2 bird. 3-mana bird. That's all it really is. And then, yeah, you get twice the amount of... It's not even twice the amount of trigger. It's just, you get in 1 additional trigger because of the Changeling. So, I just... Druid of the Anima. This is one of the cards I think might replace either Llanowar Elf or Elvish Mystic or what have you, just because it has the mana fixing in here. So this might be something that I'm going to put in here. Elvish Warmaster, I thought about... this is one of those cards where... I'm considering, but I'm a little hesitant at the same time. So it's a 2/2 for 2. Whenever 1 or more elves enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. This ability triggers only once per turn. So essentially, you're creating a little bit of extra elves in order to maximize Voja. But you cannot guarantee that you're always going to be casting elves, and so therefore I was just like, I want to try this, but at the same time, Faladorn. Whenever you cast a spell from exile or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. This was in here because Aaron had Connecting the Dots and Descendants Path, and I don't really care. He also had Ren's Resolve and Reckless Impulse. I don't really care for like this exile shit. One, Voja's is going to be drawing cards innately, So like the impulse draw is not really that like super important for me. And like especially Descendants Path, like I hate this card. Like it is one of those cards where like you put this down and then like everything like all the spells or lands that you may have needed suddenly just go to the bottom of your library and there's nothing you can do about it. Like once in a blue moon it fucking hits and then that's it. But I hate Descendants Path. Connecting the dots is another thing where it's just like you exile the top card and then you can sacrifice it and then you can play all the exiled cards and it's like okay. So that's why Feldhorn was here. Guardian Gladewalker is another shapeshifter. When it ETBs, it put a +1/+1 counter. Yay. Like, cool, I guess. Gyre Sage. I like this card, and I might put it in here. The reason why the other, the Incubation Druid is in here is because it has the ability to cast it's additional mana. Like it's either green, white, or red. Where Gyre Sage is locked in green. But like you can get a lot of green mana with this card. So this may be another one of those like we remove one mana dork and put this one in here because it can grow out of control. So a regular cohort, another changeling, and then you create another changeling. It's 4 mana for 4 power of changelings. Cool. Tulsamir Wolfblood, 6 mana for 3/4. Green creatures get +1/+1. White creatures get. So essentially, Voja gets +2/+2, and then you create a wolf. But it's that sorcery, or it doesn't have haste, and you have to tap it in order to create a 2/2 white green wolf, and it's 6 mana. So, I mean, I love it. It's come back. I actually have one from the original Ravnica set, but it's just like I don't like one. Wow. There's better cards. Universal Automaton, just a 1/1 changeling. That's all it is. No thanks. Werefox Bodyguard. I wanted to try this. I really did. So it's an elf fox knight. 1 and double white and a flash. When it ETBs, you target another non-fox creature and you exile it until this leaves the battlefield. And you can pay 1 and a white and sacrifice the Werefox Bodyguard to gain 2 life. It's definitely cool, but especially in Commander, like exiling something on a creature is never a good idea because that creature is not going to be there for long. Woodland Changeling, same as Universal Automaton. It's a changeling. That is it. It's a 2 mana 2/2. Great. Thank you. That's and then Yeva, Nature's Herald. So 4 mana, 4/4 for flash. You may cast green creature spells as though they had flash. So what's interesting, giving Voja flash is kind of insane. And there's definitely like a few cards like Tulsamir, Midnight's Light, and Nara. I don't know. There wasn't enough like in here to like really incentivize me to do this. One, you're holding up 4 mana just to do this, and then you're holding up mana. I just don't like playing I don't want to pretend to be a blue mage when I'm playing Naya. I think that's kind of what I ended up realizing. Cleansing Nova, Reckless Impulse, Ren's Resolve. What is it? There's an Austerish command I thought about putting in here as another board wipe potential. There's just no reason in putting in a board wipe. Like the destroy all artifacts and enchantments might be kind of interesting. But yeah, I think the Blasphemous Act is better. How are you doing, Ace? Feel like I'm not impeding on your time yet. All right. But yeah, the impulse draws I'm not a fan of, especially in Commander. Demand answers as an additional cost, sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. You have very little artifacts in here, and really there's no like. I think there's like Gallagreators will give you a treasure. Other than that, there's no artifacts. You're going to be discarding a card in order to draw two. No, this card sucks in this deck. Return of the Wild Speaker. Again, Voja is drawing us a ton of cards. We don't need more. Soul Partition is interesting. But I think just Path to Exile and Swords of Polishers is better. And Tef Pro, it's a nice card. I mean, there's nothing at all I can say is at all wrong with Tef Pro. But these are cheaper and much more prevalent, so I'm just going to be using these instead. Flawless Maneuver is great, by the way. And then, yeah, connecting the dots. This is whenever a creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library face down. And then pay 2, discard your hand, sacrificing, connecting the dots, put all the cards exiled into their owner's hand. Like, oh, great. Descendant's Path. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card that shares a creature type with a creature you control, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you do not, put it at the bottom of your library. This is just a card. Like, I've seen it so many times where it's just like you reveal and you're like, Flawless Maneuver. Well, this would have been really fucking handy. I'm putting it at the bottom. And like everyone now knows that your Flawless Maneuver is at the bottom of your library. Doubling Season, this is what I was talking about. I really want to put this card in here. I really do. So Doubling Season. And the Jenny Smith, how you doing? Welcome on in. Parallel Lives does not make sense because we're not just making tokens. In fact, we're putting more emphasis on +1/+1 counters than we are putting in tokens. But we don't necessarily always want to be putting in +1/+1 counters on here. So Doubling Season is what actually makes sense. And it is, but it makes sense why it is so expensive as it is. But I'm good. What about you? I'm doing fantastic. Happy Wednesday. Are you a Magic the Gathering player? So Doubling Season is an effect. If an effect would put one or more tokens into play under your control, put twice that many tokens instead. If an effect would put one or more counters on a permanent you control, put twice that many instead. So this is something where it's, yep, you are going to be putting in twice as many wolves, twice as many +1/+1 counters. It is absolutely insane. And definitely it would really have potential in this deck. It may replace War Leader's Call. Guardian Project. If a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature in your graveyard, draw a card. I mean, Garruk's Uprising. You just watch streamers and offer them your work. Are you a visual artist? Voja just makes it just does the draw. There's no point in having Guardian Project in here. Guru Cyber Racing is cheaper and gives everything trample. What's the other one? The Colossal Majesty, same thing, same deal. You just draw cards, so there's no pro. And the other thing is that you're not going to get the draw from creating the wolf tokens, so that's why it's not here right now, even though we do have 35 creatures in this deck. Journey to the Lost City. At the beginning of your upkeep, this is another one of those exile cards. To exile the top 4 cards of your library, then roll a d20. You may put a 1 through 9, you put a land card from among those onto the battlefield. 10 through 19, create a 2/2 wolf creature token. Then put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control among those cards. And then 20, put all permanents exiled from Journey to the Lost City onto the battlefield, then sacrifice it. You are a visual artist. Apologize. We get a lot of people come in, and especially bots. So we do appreciate that you're not a bot. But I'm not interested in any sort of visual effects at this time. So do appreciate it. You coming in.
Actually, it's
saying
going to be
hi.
super easy. Barely an inconvenience.
And thank you for the follow. Don't know why. Oh, because I don't have. There we go. So, yeah, I don't want to waste your time or anything, but I do appreciate the follow. So, Journey to the Lost City is just another thing that just kind of complicates things even further. Like, I don't want to just like start exiling a bunch of crap and then having to roll a d20 every upkeep, and maybe I'm being dismissive of this card, but don't really care. Ranger class. It's nice for the 2/2 wolf. And then I could see definitely having the extra 2 mana to level it up to level 2. The problem is that it has to be in sorcery speed. But I could never see having 4 extra mana at sorcery speed to level it up to level 3, just so that you can have an extra card in your hand, like essentially an extra card, creature card in your hand at all times. That's essentially what you're doing. So the way that I see this is it's just it's a 2/2 wolf. Maybe give 1+1/+1 counter, but like Voja does it so much better. Showdown of the Skulls is another exile card. That's why I got rid of it. And then Wolf Caller's Howl. Yeah, really powerful card. At no point do I ever expect this card to ever take off. That's so. What is the card? Give me 1 sec. It's Charismatic Conqueror. So, one thing that I've learned, especially in Commander, is that you can never rely on your opponents to do something. And then the moment that you do, they will immediately do the exact opposite. They will do everything to keep you from getting even a minor advantage, no matter how slight it is. So Charismatic Conqueror, right? Vigilance 2/2. Whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they do not, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. So, anyone that's ever seen my Vampirifice commander deck with Carmen, the Cruel Sky Marcher, which is the sacrifice vampire, sacrifice deck, and it has a major vampire theme. That's not the whole point. It's mostly just like forcing people to sacrifice things and so on and so forth. People will they will tap Soul Rings to make sure that I don't get a 1/1 lifelinker, even though the whole point, like, it's just a 1/1 lifelinker. I'm not like overwhelming the board with a bunch of 1/1s. And so, like, they will go out of their way to make sure that, like, they will tap creatures, they will tap artifacts. Your net turned off. Sorry to say, I can't hear the answer, but are you interested? No, sorry, Jenny Smith, I am not interested. People will go out of their way to ensure that you do not have any slight advantage when you're playing Commander, if they have any sort of say in it whatsoever. So relying on someone at the beginning of your upkeep, put X 2/2 green wolf creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the number of opponents with 4 or more cards in hand. Thank you, Jenny. I'm sorry. I do appreciate you not being a bot. So at the very most, Wolf Caller's Howl will get you 3 2/2s. And how often do you believe that you're going to have more than one opponent that actually has 4 or more cards out? That's never going to happen. People usually go down to 2 to 3 cards. There'll be this one person that is just that is going fucking crazy, and you're like, okay, great, I get a wolf, I get a 2/2 wolf, fantastic. But like, I guarantee everyone is going to be playing additional cards to ensure that you don't get that 2/2 wolf. This card is absolute garbage. The only reason that I think it was in here is because Aaron was playing in game nights, and he knew that Josh Lee Kwai could not help himself. There was no other reason to play this card. Finally, we have the lands. He had an Arid Mesa, a Wooded Hills, and a Whipswept Heath. These are very expensive fetch lands. I don't deny that these would very well fit in the deck. I just didn't want to put in additional money into this deck. Mutavault was also kind of an interesting. It's $11, and I didn't really want another base or land that didn't tap for colored mana. But pay 1, it becomes a 2/2 with all creature types, and it's still a land. So you can pay 1, tap it. So essentially, you're just paying 2, and you get both an elf and a wolf. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't want to put waste another land slot on this. Boseiju, really good. I just don't have one. I didn't want to pay for it. These are the new MKM dual lands, and they're definitely interesting. One, they have the... If I had fetch lands, these would 100% be in the deck, I think. It's just that I don't. And I don't want to put more tapped lands in here. Like Path of Ancestry is already like kind of annoying because at the fact that it comes in tapped, and same with the Triumphs. But yeah, these are really good. Like the Survey one is really nice. We don't have a lot of recursion. I think I might put this in my main Madrotha deck or something. But yeah, so Commercial District, Elegant Parlor, and Lush Portico are the surveillance. These are brand new duels. Iganjo, really nice. I just don't think that 4 damage is something that is going to be really all that impactful in Commander, but who knows? Exotic Orchard, I don't like relying on opponents for mana. Prismatic Vista is also really good, but also just expensive. And I don't know why there's a Temple of Plenty in here, but yeah, we just got rid of that. So yeah, that's Voja. Very powerful. Just kind of go insane on how it goes. So we will just go ahead and we'll do a quick playtest, and I can kind of show you just how quickly this can get out of control. Hopefully we can get a red mana source in here. This is what the problem has been like the last couple of games, is like we get a bunch of red white, even though like I go back in here. So like we got Bountiful Promenade, Canopy Vista, and what's the other, and Sunpel Grove. But we also have we have Cinderglade, Clifftop Retreat, Carpalooza Forest. We have a lot of red we have almost the same amount of red sources as we have. Yeah, we have the identical amount of red sources that we have white, but we always seem to draw the white green sources than the red. This looks a lot better. So yeah, Path of Ancestry comes into play tapped. Untap, we'll go ahead and we'll play this. Tap this, we'll sack it. Get a forest. Comes into play tapped. We'll go ahead and tap this for Soul Ring. Next turn, we have Branching Evolution. We have green. We have Arwen available. We also have Lightning Greaves, and we have 4 mana available. We can do the Maskwood Nexus. So we'll go ahead and play this. It's tapped, but next turn we can play Voja. But we don't have anything else that we can play if we were to play the Lightning Greaves. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and play the Maskwood Nexus. So now everything is changeling. So turn 4, we do get a spectator scene, which is nice. So we can play the Voja. We'll scry. Shamanic Revelation, we'll go ahead and put on the bottom. And now Voja is now a wolf and an elf. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 available. We have 2 green, unfortunately. We can do this, put a forest onto the battlefield. That will get us another land. This also allows us to scry because everything is now a creature. So what we'll do is this plus this for wood elves. We'll go ahead and search for another forest. One that is... I think it's just going to have to be a basic forest, unfortunately. So we'll do that. And then we'll play Arwen. So now Voja attacks as Vigilance, and everything is now an elf and a wolf. So Voja triggers. We get 3 +1/+1 counters, 1 for each elf. So set this to 3. Turn 5, we're attacking with an 8/8 commander. And this is now a 5/4. And then we draw 3 cards because we have 3 wolves also on play. So next turn, play a forest, or no, a plains. We're going to pay 3 for branching evolution. Gives 1, puts twice that many counters on things that come into play. We'll pay 3, and we'll play Realm Walker. This comes into play. This will trigger Arwen. Arwen will give 4 +1/+1 counters onto Realm Walker, which turns into 8 +1/+1 counters. So now this is just in a 10/11, like just for 3 mana. And for shits and giggles, we'll play Lightning Greaves, and we'll equip it to Voja. So Voja now attacks. It has Shroud. Triggers. Everything gets 4 +1/+1 counters because everything is an elf. But Branching Evolution will now trigger. This will give everything 8 +1/+1 counters. So everything is up to 11. And this goes up to 19. So turn 6, we're now swinging with a 16/16 Trample Vigilance Commander. And at home, we have a 12/12, a 13/12, and a 21/22. This is turn 6. It's insane. Yeah, well, Arcane Signet. Oh, and I didn't even... 1, 2, 3, 4. Should have drawn 4 cards. We'll dump the... We'll dump this. Or not this. This. And we would have dumped this. So next turn, we play the command tower. We play Gala Greeters. Triggers. Gala Greeters gets 22 +1/+1 counters because of Arwen. We play. So this is why I was talking about the Gyre Sage, which might be even better than Priest of Titania at this point. So Priest of Titania comes out. Arwen triggers. This now gets 22 or 24. I'm sorry. And then, yeah, if we had... If we had this... Or this. Arwen triggers. Puts 24 +1/+1 counters onto Priest of Titania. Shalai and Halar trigger. That's 24 damage. Then we attack with Voja. Gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everything gets 12 +1/+1 counters. That's 12 times 6. That's 72 damage. It's insane. So, thanks for watching. Ace, when does Rebirth come out? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. 29th. We are 8 days away.